You're just an ugly college dropout. Don't even think about showing up at this family again. Those were the last words my mother hurled at me before slamming the door in my face, leaving me on the porch of my childhood home with nothing but a suitcase by my feet. Through the window, I saw my younger sister Calista laughing with our parents in the living room, their joy echoing while I stood outside alone. That was 5 years ago when I was just 22, branded the family's shame, the one who fell short. Now, at 27, I am Selene, and everything has changed. The girl they threw away became a woman who built her own empire, earning respect in places they could never dream of. Tonight, as I step into the glittering ballroom of a corporate gala as the keynote speaker, I see my parents and Calista sitting in the front row, their eyes widening in disbelief. The same family that discarded me now watches as the world rises to its feet, applauding my name. I was deemed too plain, too mediocre, and I didn't deserve their love or support. In stark contrast, Calista was the epitome of what our family cherished: beautiful, intelligent, ambitious, and particularly, their golden child. Growing up in Nashville, Tennessee, I quickly realized that love from my parents came with strings attached. Both of them were successful entrepreneurs and had very specific desires from their daughters. We were expected to be stunning, accomplished, and flawless representations of their social standing. Calista effortlessly embodied that ideal while I felt like an outcast. I can still recall the exact moment when my life unraveled. It was during my 3rd year studying graphic design at college, a field I adored. I thrived on creating art, playing with colors, and animating ideas on screen. However, my parents despised my choice. They insisted I pursue business or law, fields they could flaunt during their country club soirees. Graphic design is for people who can't handle real work, my father exclaimed when I shared my major with him. You're squandering our money on this nonsense. My mother was worse. She seized every opportunity to pit me against Calista, who was then pursuing pre-med. Your sister is aiming to become a doctor. What do you aspire to be? Just someone who makes pretty pictures? The unending criticism wore me down. Every call home morphed into an interrogation, every visit devolved into lectures about my choices, my looks, and my future. They made it abundantly clear that I was a disappointment. When I started to suffer from depression and anxiety, they dismissed it as mere dramatics. When my grades plummeted, they threatened to withdraw all financial support. I tried to persevere, but the pressure morphed into an unbearable weight. My mental health spiraled downwards. I stopped attending classes, I neglected my eating habits, and I lost sight of my self-worth. One particularly bleak night, I made the heartbreaking choice to drop out of college, not out of desire but out of sheer desperation, as I saw no other way forward. When I communicated my decision to my parents, the fallout was instantaneous. My mother unleashed an avalanche of anger, berating me for embarrassing them, for ruining my life, and for being too foolish to recognize my colossal mistake. My father merely looked upon me with disdain, declaring that I was no longer his daughter. Calista stood at the doorway, a smirk betraying her satisfaction at witnessing my downfall. My failure made her shine all the brighter in their eyes. They granted me a week to gather my things and depart, with no financial aid, no place to stay, and cut off from my family. I was utterly alone and petrified. For months, I bounced around on friends' couches, scraping together jobs just to make ends meet, waitressing, working retail, cleaning offices at night. I did whatever it took to survive. I felt as if I had hit rock bottom, with no hope of climbing back up. But amid those shadowy days, a shift occurred within me. Perhaps it was anger, maybe desperation, or simply a fierce determination, but I resolved not to let them define me any longer. I refused to accept their narrative about who I should be. I saved every cent I earned, immersed myself in free online tutorials to master advanced design software, and crafted a portfolio whenever I got the chance. I reached out to local businesses, offering to design their logos and websites for a low fee just to gain experience. Gradually, brick by brick, I began to create something of my own. It was no stroll in the park, there were nights when I went to bed hungry as I had to choose between food and internet access. I faced moments of doubt when the voice in my mind, eerily resembling my mother's, chastised me for entertaining the notion that I could succeed without their backing. Yet, I persevered. Eventually, I witnessed a transformation. My skills improved, my clientele expanded, and my rates surged. I transitioned from couch surfing to a cramped studio, moved on to a one-bedroom apartment, and stepped away from freelancing to launch my own design agency. 5 years sped by, filled with relentless hard work, defiance against skepticism, and evolving into someone I took pride in. I severed all ties with my family, changed my phone number, and relocated across the city. I wanted absolutely nothing to do with them anymore. And then, on a balmy spring evening, I received a social media message from an old high school friend inviting me to Calista's graduation party. My sister was just about to complete her medical degree, and it seemed like the entire family was hosting a grand celebration at a posh venue downtown. The invitation felt like a trap. Why would they want me there after everything that transpired? Yet, as I gazed at the message, I sensed a shift within me. Maybe it was finally time to confront them again. Not as the shattered, desperate girl they had cast aside, but as the strong woman I had grown into. I spent the week leading up to the event wrestling with the decision to attend. A part of me wanted to completely disregard the invitation, to continue my life without them. I had created something wonderful on my own, without their guidance, without seeking their approval. Why reconsider now? But another part, still healing from their rejection, craved the chance for them to see what I had achieved. I wanted them to recognize that I had not only survived without their support, but I had flourished. The celebration was set for Saturday evening at one of Nashville's elite event spaces. I was certain my parents would go all out for Calista's fate. They thrived on showing off, on highlighting their success and the perfection of their family. I made up my mind to go. Not because I chased their approval any longer, not out of hope for an emotional reunion, but because I wanted to stand before them, eye to eye, as an equal and showcase what they had squandered. As the days unfolded leading to the party, I found myself revisiting memories from my childhood more than I had in years. Recollections I tried to bury resurfaced. I recalled being 8, proudly presenting a drawing to my parents, a piece my teacher had praised and hung on the wall, declaring I had real talent. My mother barely glanced at it, instructing me to focus on my homework instead. My father didn't even lift his eyes from his newspaper. I remembered being 13, eavesdropping as my mother chatted with her sister, lamenting how I wasn't maturing as quickly as Calista, fretting that I would be the plain daughter and hoping I'd at least be smart enough to make up for my lack of beauty. I could picture being 16, receiving my first award in a design competition, racing home to share my excitement, only to have my moment overshadowed because Calista had once again made the honor roll. Each memory echoed the same sentiment: I wasn't enough. I would never be enough. Not for them. But in that moment, seated in my apartment that I had furnished through my own efforts, surrounded by the successes I had crafted from scratch, I discovered a vital truth. Their opinions no longer mattered. I had proven my worth to the only person who genuinely mattered, myself. The night of the celebration finally came. I prepared myself for hours, not out of a need to impress anyone, but to instill confidence in myself. I chose a simple yet elegant black dress I had saved for, meticulously applied my makeup, and styled my hair. When I glimpsed my reflection, I saw a resilient individual, someone who had endured. The venue was even more lavish than I had imagined. Crystal chandeliers gleamed from the ceiling, white flowers adorned every inch, and a string quartet filled the air with classical tunes. Servers clad in sharp uniforms floated around with champagne and appetizers. It was precisely the kind of extravagant show my parents adored. I arrived fashionably late, providing me with a moment to observe before anyone noticed me. The room was bustling with people. I recognized some familiar faces from my past, distant relatives, family friends, business colleagues of my parents. Everyone was dressed to the nines, engaging in cheerful conversations, all there for Calista. In the center of it all stood my sister in a stunning white gown, embodying the image of a triumphant medical graduate. She was laughing at a joke from someone beside her, her hand resting on a handsome man I didn't know, likely her boyfriend. My parents beamed at her from either side, overflowing with pride. A sharp pang of pain gripped my chest as I observed them. That should have been me. I should have been the one to make them proud. Yet, I had fallen short of their expectations, and they had treated me as if I were worthless. Taking a deep breath, I pushed further into the room. A few heads turned my way, but nobody recognized me. I had transformed significantly over 5 years. I was slimmer, more polished, exuding a different energy. The frightened, despondent college dropout had vanished, replaced by a person who had learned to endure. I headed to the bar and ordered a glass of wine. As I waited, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Selene, is that you?" Turning around, I was delighted to see Professor Howard, one of my cherished college instructors. He had taught in the arts department, one of the few who had encouraged my design endeavors before I left. He looked older, with strands of gray in his hair, but his kind eyes remained unchanged. "Professor Howard," I exclaimed, utterly astonished. "What brings you here?" "I now teach at the medical school," he replied. Calista was one of my standout students, so talented and driven. He paused, assessing my reaction. "I heard you left school and often wondered about you. You had such incredible potential." His words struck me deeper than I anticipated. Here was someone who genuinely believed in my abilities, someone who recognized the promise in my work, and I had vanished without an explanation. "I faced some personal challenges," I said cautiously. "But I'm doing really well now. I have my own design agency." His face brightened up. "Really? That's fantastic. I always knew you'd succeed. Your work was exceptional back then, too." We chatted for a few more moments, reminiscing about the years that had flown by. He seemed truly pleased to see me thriving, which was more than I could say for most people in the room. As our conversation wrapped up, Professor Howard excused himself to mingle with other guests. I watched him walk away, feeling grateful for his warmth while simultaneously feeling the sting of isolation in this gathering of family and friends. I drifted through the party like a wraith. People glanced at me, their gazes gliding over me without recognition. 5 years was a significant span. The last time they had seen me, I was 22, young and vulnerable. Now, at 27, I was polished and self-assured. They didn't seem to recognize the transformation. As I neared the dessert table, I overheard my mother's voice. She was chatting with a group of well-dressed women, each sporting practiced smiles. "We're just so proud of Calista," she exclaimed, mentioning how demanding medical school was, yet Calista never gave up. "She's always been so determined and focused, unlike some others." The implication was painfully clear, she was referring to me. Despite not mentioning my name, a wave of anger surged within me, hot and sharp. "Yes, we're incredibly fortunate," my father interjected, joining the conversation. "Both of our daughters have achieved so much. Calista is going to be a doctor, and our eldest has found great success in business." My heart stopped. What was he talking about? They had disowned me, told me I was worthless, and now they were deceiving their friends, acting as if everything was fine, pretending pride in me. One woman in the group asked, "Oh, I didn't realize you had another daughter. Where is she? I'd love to meet her." My mother's smile tightened. "She couldn't make it tonight. Work commitments, you know how it is." The lie was delivered so casually, so practiced, I wondered how long they had been stringing it along. How many times had they promoted a narrative where I was still part of the family, still contributing to their flawless image, when in truth, they had discarded me like trash. I felt an urge to confront them immediately, to reveal to everyone that I was the daughter they were lying about, that they had severed ties and abandoned me, and that their perfect family was just a facade. But something restrained me. Maybe it was a survival instinct. Perhaps it was a tactical choice. Or maybe I was simply curious to see how far their web of deceit extended before unveiling the truth. I decided to observe further, gathering intel on exactly what story they had been peddling to their social circle. I wandered around the room, listening in on conversations, piecing together the narrative my parents had crafted. It became glaringly obvious that they had told people I was working overseas, too busy with my thriving career to attend family events, and that I sent my love but couldn't be there in person. They had spun a complex fabrication where I was still their accomplished daughter, conveniently out of sight. This realization made me feel nauseated. They wanted accolades for raising two successful daughters without having to actually engage with me at all. They sought to uphold their image while disregarding the wreckage of their relationship with one of their children. As I was digesting this, Calista strolled past me, heading toward a cluster of peers likely from her medical school. She cast a fleeting glance in my direction, her eyes sliding over my face without a hint of recognition, and continued on her way. My own sister didn't recognize me, the girl I had grown up with, shared a roof with, clashed with, and laughed alongside. Now, I was utterly invisible to her. I trailed her at a distance, eager to hear what she was sharing with her friends. They were celebrating her, discussing their aspirations, and recounting tales from medical school. Calista was vivacious and content, relishing the spotlight. "Your family must be so proud," one friend said. Calista chuckled. "They are. My parents have always been incredibly supportive, they've pushed me to excel." Another friend inquired, "Do you have any siblings?" "I have an older sister," Calista responded, her tone careful, "but we're not close. A few years back, she made some questionable decisions, and now we hardly speak." She labeled my breakdown, my ongoing battle with depression, and my fight for survival as mere bad choices. "It's disheartening," her friend noted with sympathy. Calista just shrugged it off. "Some individuals simply can't cope with pressure," she remarked. My parents poured their efforts into helping her, yet she threw it all away. She quit college and practically vanished from our lives. We have no clue what she's up to now. Lima, the harshness of her words hit me harder than I anticipated. She spoke of me as if I were a stranger, as if my pain held no significance, ignoring all the years of emotional turmoil inflicted by our parents, making it seem like it was my fault. Right then, I wanted to confront her. I yearned to share what I had been up to for the last 5 years, to showcase my achievements and finally show her that her assumptions about me were utterly misguided. But I refrained. The evening was still fresh, there would be moments for revelation later. I distanced myself from Callista's group and slipped away to a quieter nook of the room. Soon enough, Professor Howard reappeared, this time alongside a man in a crisp suit. "Selene," Professor Howard greeted warmly, "I'd like you to meet someone special. This is Dr. Charles, the Dean of the medical school. I was just sharing details about your design agency with him." Dr. Charles extended his hand, and I shook it, feeling pleasantly surprised by the professor's endorsement. "Pleasure to meet you," he said. "Professor Howard has spoken very highly of your talents." "Thank you," I responded, surprised by the praise. "Actually," Dr. Charles continued, "we're currently in search of someone to revamp our medical school's website and branding efforts. Our existing design is quite out of date. Would you be interested in exploring a potential contract?" My heart raced. This was a huge opportunity, exactly the kind of client that could elevate my agency significantly, and it was happening at my sister's graduation celebration while my family acted as if I didn't exist. "I would be very interested," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite my excitement. We exchanged contact details, and Dr. Charles assured me he would reach out the following week to arrange a formal meeting. As he departed, Professor Howard offered a reassuring smile. "Opportunities often come when we least expect them," he said gently. I nodded, feeling my mind spin with possibility. The night was turning in an unexpected direction, and I sensed that things were about to take a thrilling turn. Once Dr. Charles left, I excused myself from Professor Howard and stepped outside onto the terrace to catch my breath. I needed a moment to digest everything that was happening. The cool night air was refreshing against my heated skin. The terrace provided a stunning view of downtown Nashville, its twinkling lights stretching across the horizon. Leaning against the railing, I shut my eyes, trying to calm the whirlwind of emotions inside: anger, satisfaction, confusion, vindication, all colliding together, making it hard to distinguish which was strongest. Footsteps approached, prompting me to turn around to see an unfamiliar woman, a bit older, perhaps in her 50s, with perfectly styled gray hair and a chic blue dress. She beamed at me. "Need a break from the hustle?" she asked, stepping beside me at the railing. "Something like that," I replied. "I'm Helen," she introduced, a colleague of Calista's father. "We've worked together for years." "My father's colleague?" I kept my expression neutral. "Pleasure to meet you," I replied. "You look familiar," Helen observed, studying my face closely. "I don't think we've met before," I answered cautiously. She tilted her head, still assessing me. "No, I'm sure I recognize you from somewhere. Perhaps in pictures?" Then her expression shifted slightly. "Oh my goodness. Are you Selene?" My stomach sank, so someone did remember me. "Yes," I confirmed quietly. Helen's face lit up with genuine warmth. "I've heard so much about you. Your parents mentioned your success in business. They said you're working internationally, and I'm so glad you managed to come tonight. I'm sure Calista is thrilled to have you here." The fabrications my parents spun were even more intricate than I had imagined. I chose not to correct Helen. Instead, I simply smiled as she continued. "Your father showed me some photos of your projects last month. Absolutely stunning work. He is so proud of you. He even keeps a portfolio of your designs in his office." This was overwhelming. My father, the same man who dismissed my career choice as worthless and disowned me for pursuing it, kept a portfolio of my work? "That's surprising," I replied, struggling to mask the edge in my voice. Helen seemed oblivious to my tone. "Oh, he talks about you endlessly. Both his daughters are so accomplished. You must have wonderful parents who raised such successful children." I felt a wave of nausea. They were taking credit for my achievements, successes I had built entirely on my own after they abandoned me. They were leveraging my accomplishments to boost their own standing, all while pretending I was too occupied to attend family gatherings. "Excuse me," I interjected sharply, needing to find the restroom. I had left Helen on the terrace and returned inside, my hands trembling with fury. I felt an overwhelming urge to confront them, to reveal their deceit immediately in front of all their friends and colleagues. I wanted everyone to understand the truth. However, as I scanned the room, I spotted my parents in a swarm of admirers, Calista basking in the limelight, and the flawless image they had constructed around themselves. It dawned on me that confronting them in public would merely make me appear bitter and small. They'd twist it to portray me as jealous and unstable, just as they'd always labeled me the problem child. I realized I had to be more cunning than that. I needed evidence, proof that they couldn't finesse or dismiss. I took out my phone and began recording voice memos, capturing the reality I was witnessing, the blaring lies about how proud my parents were, the facade that I was still a part of their lives, the intricate web of fiction they had woven. As I was busy documenting the scene, I noticed Calista breaking away from her group, heading toward the hallway that led to the private rooms. I trailed behind, keeping my distance. She entered one of the smaller conference rooms adjacent to the main hall. After pausing for a beat, I stealthily nudged the door open a crack. Calista was on her phone, her back toward me. "I know, Mom," she spoke into the receiver. "I'm managing it. No one's specifically inquiring about her. Everyone believes she's working abroad." There was a moment of silence as she listened. What if she decides to show up? And Mom, she isn't aware of the party. We didn't invite her. Even if she somehow finds out, she wouldn't have the courage to return after 5 years. My heart raced. They were in the thick of a conversation about keeping me sidelined. This was no ordinary lie. They were intentionally plotting to exclude me and then fabricate an explanation for my absence. The trust fund. Calista went on, yes, I spoke to the lawyer last week. Given that she's been out of touch for so long and there's documentation of her disengagement, we should be able to claim her share as forfeited. It might take some time, but he's confident we can make it happen. I felt as though I had been hit in the gut. My grandmother had established trust funds for both of us prior to her passing. I had never thought about it, consumed as I was with just surviving. But clearly, my family had been preoccupied with it. They weren't merely taking credit for my achievements, they were actively scheming to seize funds that rightfully belonged to me. Calista chuckled at something my mother said on the other end of the line, saying, "Don't worry. She made her choice when she dropped out. She chose to ruin her life. That money is better off with someone who actually accomplished something with their education, someone who made you proud." Those words echoed inside my head, as if she was blaming my mental breakdown on me, as if their years of emotional abuse played no part in it. As if I had chosen to struggle and fight for every ounce of stability. I stepped back from the door to avoid being seen. My hands shook so violently that I could barely hold on to my phone, but I had captured the entire conversation. I had proof now, unrefuted evidence of their lies, their manipulation, and their scheme to rob me. I wandered back to the main hall in a daze. Everything I thought I understood about that evening had shifted. This wasn't merely about them feeling ashamed of my dropout status. This was about money and them rewriting the narrative to claim my inheritance while preserving their pristine facade. I needed to talk to someone, to seek advice. I pulled up my phone and messaged my business partner, Jordan, the only person who was aware of the entirety of my past. The message was straightforward: need legal help. Family trying to steal inheritance. Have recording of admission. What do I do? His reply came in fast: do not confront them yet. Leave the party. Meet me at the office tomorrow morning. Bring everything you have. We'll handle this properly. He was right, I had to play this strategically. Yet, the thought of leaving now felt impossible. I came here to confront them, and I refused to flee again. I took a deep breath and returned to the heart of the party. The night was at its climax as my father prepared to address the gathered crowd, everyone gravitating toward a small stage set up at the back of the room. I positioned myself near the edge, ensuring I could see everything without being too noticeable. My father stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand, flashing his most charming smile. "Good evening, everyone," he began. "Thank you for joining us to celebrate this remarkable occasion. Today we honor my daughter Calista, who has worked diligently to achieve her dream of becoming a doctor." The crowd erupted in applause as Calista stood next to my mother, looking radiantly happy. As my dad continued, he expressed, "There's nothing as fulfilling as witnessing your children's achievements. My wife and I have been fortunate to have 2 extraordinary daughters. Both are intelligent, ambitious, and resolute about leaving their imprint on the world." I felt my jaw tighten. He was at it again, pretending to be proud of me, pretending we were one happy family. "Calista has always been dedicated and focused," he elaborated. "Even from a young age, she aspired to help others and has never strayed from that dream. And this evening, as she celebrates her graduation from one of the top medical schools in the nation, we couldn't be prouder." More applause erupted. I noticed Professor Howard in the audience, watching intently. Dr. Charles stood by, nodding in agreement. "Our other daughter, Selene, can't be here tonight due to work overseas," my father said smoothly. "But she sends her love and heartfelt congratulations to her sister. Selene has built a thriving design company and travels a lot for her job. We are incredibly proud of both our girls and the remarkable women they've become." The ease with which he fabricated these tales was astonishing. He spoke those untruths with such certainty that I almost found myself believing them for a fleeting moment. Almost. Family means everything, my father concluded. And tonight, we honor not just Calista's success, but the strength of family that holds us up through life's challenges. To Calista. The audience echoed, to Calista, as they raised their glasses. I remained still, observing my father step down from the stage to embrace my sister, catching a glimpse of my mother wiping tears of joy, and witnessing the celebration of this fabricated family moment built on lies. Professor Howard made his way through the crowd and approached me again. "Great speech," he remarked. "I'm surprised your sister couldn't make it. I didn't even know you had a sibling until tonight." I scrutinized him closely. He seemed genuinely puzzled, not trying to catch me off guard. "That's intriguing," I replied slowly. "Because I am his other daughter." Professor Howard's eyes widened in surprise. He glanced between me and my father, then back again. "I'm confused." "He just said you were overseas," he noted. "He lied," I stated simply. "I'm right here. I've been here the entire evening. No one in my family has recognized me because they haven't seen me in 5 years, ever since they disowned me for dropping out of college." The professor stared, processing the revelation, his mind visibly piecing things together that seemed inconsistent. "But he mentioned he was proud of you and that you're successful," he remarked. "I do have a successful business," I confirmed. "But they are completely unaware of that. They have no idea about my life since they cast me aside. They've fabricated narratives about me to save face with their acquaintances." Professor Howard looked genuinely astonished. "That's outrageous. Why would they behave like that?" "Because their reputation matters more to them than I do," I replied, my voice tinged with bitterness, yet laced with truth. Before Professor Howard could answer, Dr. Charles approached us. "Everything okay?" he asked, sensing the laden atmosphere. Professor Howard glanced at me, as if giving me the option to share what I had just revealed. I made a quick decision. "Dr. Charles," I said, "I have to come clean about something before we proceed with any business discussions." He seemed intrigued. "Go ahead." "My full name is Selene," I announced. "My last name is the same as Calista's because she's my sister. I'm the daughter my father referred to in his speech. The one he claimed was overseas." Dr. Charles's expression shifted from friendly curiosity to confusion. "But you're here. You're not overseas." "Exactly," I confirmed. "My father lied. He's been deceiving everyone here about me. The reality is my parents disowned me 5 years ago when I left college due to mental health issues. They cut all ties, told me never to reach out again, and pretended I didn't exist until recently, apparently when they decided to start telling people I was successful and busy working overseas. They're using my real success, which they know nothing about, to appear as good parents." Dr. Charles looked from me back to the stage, where my father was still reveling in applause, then turned his attention back to me. "This is a serious claim." "It's not a claim, it's the truth," I asserted, pulling out my phone. "I have a recording from earlier tonight, featuring my sister on the phone with my mother. In it, they express relief that I didn't discover the party and show up. They also discuss plans to take my inheritance, arguing that I forfeited it by dropping out and losing contact." Professor Howard's face drained of color. "Selene, this is horrific. I had no idea you went through such trials." "Most don't," I replied, "because I've been concentrating on rebuilding my life rather than airing out my family's dirty laundry. I came here tonight because I was eager to reconnect with them. I aimed to confront them as someone who triumphed in spite of their actions, not due to their influence. What shocked me was uncovering their fabrications about me spanning years, and their devious plans to siphon off money that rightfully belongs to me." Dr. Charles paused thoughtfully, evaluating my expression. "Can you demonstrate your identity?" I retrieved my driver's license and showed it to him, my name, birth date, and Nashville address, all confirming who I truly am. "I believe you," he finally said, visibly disturbed by what I had revealed. "However, I need to carefully consider our business conversations moving forward. This places me in a complicated situation since your father is a valued colleague and I have known your family for many years. My heart sank. Naturally, my family's esteem would overshadow my truth. It always did. Then, Professor Howard intervened. With all due respect, Dr. Charles, Selene's familial background is irrelevant to her professional abilities. I taught her during her college years before she left, and her performance was outstanding then. From what she has shared with me, she has only progressed since. It would be profoundly unfair to penalize her professionally because her family dynamics are troubled. Dr. Charles contemplated this momentarily before nodding slowly. You are correct. Personal issues shouldn't obstruct professional chances. Selene, I will reach out next week as scheduled. What occurs with your family is solely between you and them. Your achievements are what truly matter. A wave of relief surged through me. But it was fleeting. I noticed my mother approaching, a welcoming smile plastered on her face. She was not alone, she had brought someone whom she likely intended to introduce to the dean. Dean Gregory, my mother called out as she neared. I want to introduce you to some cherished friends of our family. As she drew closer, her eyes finally settled on me, and for a fleeting moment, I observed a mix of recognition, confusion, and panic flicker across her face. Selene, she whispered, the color draining from her complexion. Hello, Mother, I replied calmly. Great party, but I see I wasn't on the guest list. My mother's mouth moved like a fish gasping for air as she glanced nervously between Dr. Charles and Professor Howard, clearly scrambling to manage the situation. What are you doing here? She finally sputtered, her tone tight. I was invited by a friend, I responded, while reflecting on the fact that I had been here for over an hour and this was the first instance any family member had acknowledged me. Isn't it fascinating? I observed as my mother's eyes flitted around anxiously. The tension was becoming noticeable to those nearby. We should discuss this privately, she urged, reaching for my arm. I stepped back, evading her touch. Why? You've been talking about me publicly all night, expressing how proud you are of me, highlighting my achievements abroad, and how my business is flourishing. We might as well keep this conversation public, right? You don't understand, my mother hissed, as her calm exterior began to crack. We were trying to protect the family. Protect the family? I repeated, raising my voice enough for several heads to turn in our direction. Is that what you call disowning your daughter? Deserting her during a time of mental struggle? Tossing her out with no support? You made that choice when you dropped out, my mother retorted defensively. You squandered everything we provided for you. What you provided, I said, my anger now bubbling over, was only criticism, competition, and love that was conditional. When I finally couldn't cope, you discarded me like I was worthless. At that moment, my father appeared, drawn in by the uproar. Upon seeing me, his expression mirrored the same sequence of feelings as my mother: recognition, confusion, panic. Selene, he spoke, his tone deliberately even. This isn't the appropriate time or place for this talk. Oh really? Because you seem to have a lot to say about me in your speech, I shot back. All those untruths about your pride in me, my supposed successful business abroad, and the emphasis on family support. Should we enlighten everyone with the truth, Dad? Should I inform them that you haven't spoken to me in 5 years? That you declared I was no longer your daughter? It was clear that attention was now fully on us, conversations gradually halting as guests turned their focus our way. I spotted Calista maneuvering through the crowd, her face pale with alarm. Selene, please, my father urged, attempting to maintain his composure. You're causing a scene. I'm causing a scene? I laughed bitterly. You've been fabricating an entire alternate reality for me. You've been leveraging my real accomplishments, which you know nothing about, to project the image of supportive parents, and now you're upset that I'm exposing the truth. Calista reached us, her eyes wide with concern. What's happening? Your sister has decided to crash the party and stir up trouble at your celebration, my mother snapped, perfectly in line with her history of making everything about her. Uninvited? I shot a glance at Calista. Here's the irony, I overheard your earlier phone call. The one where you expressed relief to Mom that I was unaware of the party and wouldn't crash it. The one where you schemed about grabbing my inheritance. Callista's complexion drained of color. I have no idea what you're talking about, she retorted. I pulled out my phone, grinning. I recorded that conversation. Want me to play it for everyone? Let them hear you and Mom conspiring to claim I abandoned my trust fund. Let them hear you laugh about how I've ruined my life. You're insane, Calista hissed. You've always been so unstable and dramatic. I was battling my own demons, I corrected her sharply. I was struggling with depression, anxiety, and a desperate need for help. Instead of standing by me, you mocked me. You all did. You made me feel worthless until that became my reality. Professor Howard cleared his throat, drawing attention. I think it's essential everyone hears this. I taught Selene in college, and she was one of the brightest students I've ever encountered. When she left, I was heartbroken because I recognized her immense talent, yet I also understood she faced challenges beyond school. He glanced at my parents. A true family would have rallied around her during those times, but from what I'm gathering tonight, you abandoned her when she needed you the most. And now, you're attempting to take credit for her accomplishments while trying to seize her inheritance. That's not family, it's exploitation. My father's face flushed with anger and humiliation. You have no authority to judge our family choices. You don't know the complete story. Then enlighten us, Dr. Charles said softly. Everyone directed their attention to him. I'd love to hear your side because the narrative I'm hearing is quite concerning. The crowd around us had swelled. People whispered, phones emerged, and some even began recording. My parents' flawless image was crumbling in real time, and there was nothing they could do to defend it. My mother attempted one last effort to mend the situation. Selene has always had issues. We did everything possible to help her, but she rejected our support. When she dropped out, we were heartbroken. We gave her space, hoping she'd return, but she vanished. We've been looking for her for years. That's a blatant lie, I declared with certainty. You told me to cease all contact. You changed your numbers and made it clear I was as good as dead to you. I didn't disappear, you erased me. The only reason you're upset now is that I showed up and disrupted your charming narrative. Just then, Jordan, my business partner, appeared beside me. I hadn't even noticed his arrival, but seeing his familiar face filled me with relief. He must have seen my location from the text I sent earlier. Is everything all right? Jordan asked, his tone revealing his awareness that things weren't well. Jordan, I replied gratefully. These are my parents. Parents? This is my business partner, Jordan. We co-own Selene Design Agency. Perhaps you'd like to view the portfolio Dad supposedly keeps in his office, except you can't because he doesn't have one since he's clueless about what I've accomplished over the last 5 years. Jordan produced his tablet and displayed our agency's website. Selene Design Agency, he announced, turning the screen towards the curious crowd. Founded 3 years ago, employs 15 people, and last year's revenue surpassed $2 million. We collaborate with clients nationwide, including numerous Fortune 500 companies. He swiped through our portfolio, showcasing stunning project after project, sleek website designs, branding identities, and marketing campaigns. All my work, crafted without a single dollar or ounce of support from my family. This is what Selene built after you pushed her away, Jordan continued, his tone steady yet piercing. She began from nothing, crashing on couches, juggling 3 jobs, and teaching herself advanced design techniques. She saved every cent until she could rent her own apartment, then freelanced until she secured enough clients to launch an agency. She accomplished all of this solo and has thrived immensely. My mother's expression was inscrutable as she stared at the screen. My father's jaw was clenched so tightly it seemed it might shatter. Calista looked as if she'd been slapped. $2 million, my father exclaimed, and I could detect the greed in his voice even amidst his shock. That signifies revenue, not profit, Jordan clarified. But yes, the business is thriving. Selene is among the most sought-after designers in Nashville. This makes it particularly ironic that you've been claiming her success while attempting to seize her inheritance. We weren't stealing, my mother weakly protested. We were just claiming what rightfully belongs to us after she abandoned the family. I have a recording that tells a different tale, I reminded her. Calista was explicit on the phone regarding the scheme to assert that I forfeited my trust fund. I'm confident a judge would find this quite intriguing. Professor Howard chimed in once more. What's particularly alarming here is the consistent pattern of actions. You didn't just abandon Selene when she needed support. For 5 years, you've been fabricating stories about her, leveraging her achievements to enhance your own standing, and now you try to rob her. This isn't merely a family spat or a misunderstanding. This is blatant manipulation and deceit. I noticed several faces in the audience nodding in agreement. Friends of my parents wore expressions that ranged from confusion to outright disgust. The carefully curated facade was crumbling. Dr. Charles turned his attention to my parents. I have known your family for many years and have always had great respect for you as friends and colleagues. However, what I'm hearing tonight is profoundly troubling. If even a fraction of what your daughter is asserting holds true, your behavior is utterly reprehensible. I affirmed firmly, it's all true. Every single word. And I can substantiate it. I possess documentation showing their attempts to cut me off. I have a recording of Calista discussing the trust fund. I have witnesses ready to testify about my mental state at the time they abandoned me. I've spent the last 5 years building an entirely independent life without any support or contact from them. My father made one last effort to regain control. Selene, you're being spiteful. Yes, we've made mistakes. Yes, harsh words were exchanged. But we're still your family. We can resolve this privately. Now you want privacy? I replied incredulously. After you publicly lied about me all evening, after delivering that heartfelt speech about family ties and being proud of both your daughters, you don't get to dictate when it's public and when it's private based on your convenience. Jordan leaned in closely and whispered, "The lawyer's here. I rang him after your text. He's waiting outside." I nodded and faced my parents again. Here's what's going to happen tomorrow morning. You will meet with my lawyer. You'll provide complete documentation regarding the trust fund my grandmother bequeathed to me. You will sign papers relinquishing any claims to that money and grant me full access. And you will accomplish this swiftly and discreetly. And if we refuse, my father countered, I'll go to everyone here tonight and reveal the whole story. I declared, I'll play them the recording of Calista, provide substantiation for everything you've done, and ensure everyone in your social circle, every associate who thinks you're respectable citizens, discovers who you truly are. I'll shatter the reputation you cherish so much. My mother's complexion shifted from pale to red with rage. You wouldn't dare, she exclaimed. Try me, I shot back coolly. I have nothing left to lose. You've already taken everything away from me once. I rebuilt my life without you. I don't require your finances or your validation. But I refuse to let you rob me while pretending to be proud parents in the process. Finally, Calista found her voice. This is ludicrous. You show up here after 5 years and make threats. I corrected her, I didn't threaten you. I offered you a choice. Sign over what's rightly mine or face the repercussions of your actions. It's really that simple. Jordan glanced at his watch, saying, the lawyer is waiting. Selene, let's go. Let them ponder their choices overnight. I looked back at my family one last time. My mother was now in tears, careful enough not to smudge her makeup. My father appeared furious but cornered. Calista looked completely shocked, her immaculate graduation celebration transformed into a public fiasco. "Congratulations on your graduation, Calista," I said. "I hope it turned out to be everything you wished for." With that, I turned and headed towards the exit, with Jordan beside me, leaving my family amidst their flabbergasted guests. As promised, the lawyer, Victor, awaited us in the lobby. A sharp-eyed professional in his 40s, Jordan had collaborated with him on several business agreements and had complete trust in him. "Hello, Selene," Victor greeted me with a firm handshake. Jordan briefed him on the essentials. "Quite the predicament, isn't it?" I remarked, still reeling from the confrontation. We moved to a quieter section of the lobby where Victor retrieved a legal pad and began to take notes. I shared everything: the disownment 5 years ago, the lies my family put forth, the overheard conversation about the trust fund, and the recording I had made. "Do you possess documentation for the trust fund?" Victor inquired. "I have copies of the original documents sent by my grandmother's lawyer years ago," I replied. "I never accessed the funds because I wanted to prove my independence, but I kept all the paperwork." Victor nodded in approval. "Excellent. That will be helpful. And you have this recording?" I played it for him. Calista's voice was crisp and clear as she discussed with my mother their intentions to claim I had forfeited my trust fund by dropping out and severing contact with the family. Victor focused intently, jotting down notes. Once it concluded, he lifted his gaze and exclaimed, "This is outstanding evidence of fraudulent intent. Coupled with their public falsehoods tonight and the witness accounts about their treatment of you, we are primed for a robust case." "What's our next step?" I inquired. "We act swiftly," Victor replied. "Tomorrow morning, I will draft a formal letter to your parents requesting a meeting. I'll detail our findings and outline our course of action if they refuse to comply. Given their evident concern for their standing in the community, along with several credible witnesses to tonight's events, I'm confident they will accept our terms and the trust fund demands. From what you've shared, your grandmothers didn't impose any restrictions regarding education or familial contact. Therefore, the funds are yours, regardless of whether you graduated or maintained a relationship with your parents. Any effort to claim otherwise would be considered fraudulent. They are well aware of this, which is why they intended to handle this matter incognito instead of pursuing the proper legal avenues." A wave of relief surged through me. "So, I truly can receive the money?" "Absolutely, you definitely can," Victor affirmed. "But Selene, I must ask, what do you seek beyond just the money? Are you interested in pursuing criminal charges for their attempted fraud? Would you like to litigate for emotional damages? Or do you prefer to expose their treatment of you publicly?" I contemplated this carefully. Part of me craved to completely dismantle their lives as they attempted to do with mine, yet another part longed solely for liberation from their grasp. "I want my money," I finally declared. "I wish for them to sign legal papers affirming they have no claim to it and will never reach out to me again. Plus, I want them to cease their false narratives about me. They can no longer exploit my success for their benefit." Victor nodded in agreement. "That's a totally reasonable and attainable goal. I'll prepare the necessary documents tonight for our meeting tomorrow." Jordan placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You did exceptionally well in there. I can only imagine how challenging that must have been." "It was terrifying," I admitted, "but absolutely necessary. I've been escaping them for 5 years, and tonight, I finally stood my ground." We spent an additional 30 minutes with Victor fine-tuning the details and strategy. By the time we wrapped up, it was nearly 10 o'clock. The celebration was likely winding down. I pondered over what my family was telling their remaining guests. Nearly reading my thoughts, Jordan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and shared it with me. It was a message from Professor Howard. "Just wanted to let you know that several attendees approached me post your departure, asking about your agency. I provided them with your contact details. This evening could really benefit your business. Ironically, I chuckled at that. My family's pursuit of a flawless image had spectacularly backfired. Not only had I unveiled their falsehoods, but I might also have gained potential clients in the process. Come on, Jordan encouraged. Let's get you back home. You've had enough excitement for one evening. He drove me back to my cozy one-bedroom apartment in a lovely neighborhood that I had labored diligently to attain. As I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the familiar space welcomed me like a haven. Thank you for being there tonight, I expressed to Jordan. I truly don't know how I'd have managed without your support. That's what partners are for, he replied with a grin. Besides, witnessing you dismantle your awful family was absolutely epic. After Jordan departed, I slipped into my comfy clothes and brewed myself a cup of tea. Settling onto my couch, I scanned the life I had crafted. Every piece of furniture and decor had been earned through my tireless effort. My family had given me nothing, and thus, I owed them absolutely nothing. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. For a moment, I wondered if it was one of my parents. Upon opening it, I discovered it was from Dr. Charles. Following the disclosures tonight, I want you to understand that my offer for the medical school project remains valid. In fact, I'm even more impressed with your accomplishments. Let's arrange that meeting for the following week. You deserve this chance. A grin spread across my face as I typed a response confirming my availability. The meeting with my parents and their lawyer took place 3 days later in Victor's office. I sat next to Victor on one side of the conference table, while my parents, Calista, and their attorneys sat across from us. The air was thick with tension. Their lawyer, an elderly gentleman named Henry, tried to seize control of the session right away. My clients are open to discussing a settlement concerning the trust fund, but they require guarantees that this matter will remain confidential. Victor didn't even flinch. Your clients tried to defraud my client of funds that rightfully belong to her. They hold no power here. We aren't negotiating, we're informing them of what is set to unfold. He pushed copies of the documents across the table. These are the terms. Initially, you will grant full access to the trust fund set up by Selene's grandmother. Next, you will sign a legal document affirming that you hold no entitlement to those funds now or in the future. Then, you must cut off all contact with Selene unless she chooses to reach out to you. After that, you're to refrain from mentioning her name, her achievements, or any references to her in all your social or professional interactions. My father began to speak, but Victor raised his hand to halt him. I'm not done yet. If you do not adhere to any of these stipulations, we will file charges for criminal fraud. Additionally, we'll distribute copies of the recordings and witness accounts from the graduation party to your colleagues, friends, and business contacts. The decision is yours to make. Henry glanced at the documents and then at my parents. My mother was shedding tears again, real tears this time. My father seemed crushed. Calista fixated on the table, avoiding my gaze. This is extortion, Henry protested feebly. No, Victor replied promptly. This is about justice. Your clients can sign these documents and move on with their lives, without the money they attempted to steal or the daughter they aimed to exploit, or they can refuse, and we will ensure that the world knows exactly what they did. Their reputation will be shattered, and they will still lose the trust fund case in court. This way, they at least maintain a shred of dignity. An extended silence followed. At last, my father spoke. How much is in the trust fund? That's no longer your concern, Victor replied. But just so you know, it's more than enough to make Selene quite comfortable, more than comfortable, in fact. My mother locked eyes with me, really trying to see me. How can you do this to your own family? I held her gaze firmly. You stopped being my family 5 years ago when you tossed me out. I'm just ensuring you can't hurt me anymore. We made mistakes, she pleaded desperately. But we are still your parents. Doesn't that hold any value? It did once, I replied quietly. It used to mean everything. But you taught me that love comes with conditions, that I'm only worth your care if I meet your expectations. You showed me that my pain and struggles are insignificant if they inconvenience you. You educated me in those lessons quite well. Calista finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said those things on the call. You're not sorry for what you said, I countered. You're sorry that I overheard and recorded them. There's a distinction. Victor tapped the documents. We need a decision. Sign or we will proceed with public exposure and legal actions. Henry murmured something to my parents, leading to a brief, intense exchange in hushed tones. Ultimately, my father picked up the pen. This isn't over, he declared as he signed. Yes, it is, I shot back. This is as over as it will ever be. One by one, they affixed their signatures to the documents. My mother, my father, and even Calista, who had been listed as a secondary beneficiary in some of the prior paperwork. Each signature felt like a burden lifting from my shoulders. Once it was complete, Victor gathered the signed papers and made copies for everyone. You'll be notified when the trust fund transfer is finalized. I expect it will occur this week. My parents stood to leave. My mother hesitated at the door, turning to look back at me one last time. I hope you find happiness, she said, and for an instant, she almost sounded genuine. I'm already happy, I replied. I've been for a while. I just needed to learn how to find it without you. They exited, and I sat there enveloped in the abrupt silence of the conference room. Victor beamed at me. How do you feel? Free, I declared simply. For the first time in my life, I feel entirely free. The trust fund transfer was finalized 5 days later. The amount was significant, surpassing my expectations. My grandmother had invested wisely, and the fund had grown impressively over the years. Coupled with my business revenue, I had truly achieved wealth. But what mattered most wasn't the money. What mattered was that I had confronted those who caused me pain and refused to let them dictate my story anymore. I had unveiled their lies, safeguarded my interests, and permanently removed them from my life. The medical school contract came through the following week. Dr. Charles emphasized that the project was awarded to me based on merit alone. Not out of pity or drama. My agency's accomplishments stood tall on their own. My parents never regained their standing in their social circle. News of what transpired at Calista's graduation party spread swiftly. Their friends distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with those who had mistreated their own daughter so callously. My father's business faltered as partners quietly severed ties with him. My mother withdrew from her social groups, unable to handle the scrutiny. Calista completed her medical degree but faced challenges securing a reputable residency placement. The recordings and witness statements had circulated throughout the medical community, and her ethics were put under scrutiny. Eventually, she relocated to a different state, aiming to start anew in a place where nobody was aware of her past. They had constructed their existence around how they were perceived and their social standing, and when those foundations crumbled, they found themselves with nothing to rely on. Fast forward 6 months, and here I was in my expanded office, observing my team tackle projects that would have seemed utterly unattainable just a year ago. The sense of success felt genuine at last, well-deserved and unshakable. I discovered that seeking my family's validation isn't a prerequisite for forging a meaningful life. Often, the family you deserve is the one you choose to create for yourself. Sometimes, the most profound form of revenge isn't about destruction, it's about thriving so spectacularly, feeling so joyous and liberated, that their opinions become irrelevant. I had walked away from them at that graduation celebration, and I haven't regretted it ever since. That was the moment I truly triumphed.